A N C N D A E F F O S J S A J D B. Now I know I can spell tyranny. Your ABCs, obviously, your DA and your SAJDB, to kind of see who your oppressors are and understand who they are. They love their alphabet agencies, makes them sound very official. In America, it's your FBI and CIA and ADL. We all have the same and similar organizations. So we are well into this lockdown now. 30 days to flatten the curve has become 300 days plus in the UK, and still it's actually incrementally increased the mask wearing and the compliance. And get worn down by the fight. They're insisting that we take this COVID test up your nose at work, which I've refused to do. The guys didn't look very happy that all took it. They just comply. They say, oh, it's not compulsory, but they're putting a pressure on me and kind of suggesting that they may have to move me to another job, which is basically compulsory. Because if you now start having to leave your job and then you go somewhere else and they also have the same problem, and next thing you know, you can't get any work, that is compulsory. You just forget about this omitting of using language. So, yes, and with that testing, I know some of the guys, they couldn't smell up one of their noses. One of the guys had a nosebleed. But still, they forge on ahead and act as if, they pull you in alone for one. They make sure, because there are one or two others that haven't taken the test. But they make sure that they got you man alone, which is just extremely China-esque of this whole thing. And then they also say, oh, it's not compulsory. So there's this psychological thing of letting you think you've won, and got out of that. But then the next week, they're asking the same questions again. And basically little comments all the time and by management, and so on and so on and so on, right? No medical procedure can be forced on anybody. Well, that's how it used to be. You didn't have to disclose your HIV positive status, etc., etc. They defended all the pufters around that whole thing, the morphs, and then not that they even demanded it, but this is how the oligarchs, because they often, like to pit us against one another, which is a huge weapon in their arsenal, black against white, degenerate against non-degenerate, whatever you like. The billionaire and trillionaires are the enemy. Anyone who's made that kind of money, it's a stamp, it's a mark of approval. They do not allow anybody to gate crash that it has not passed the oligarch tests, whatever they may be. So I see far more compliance than I've ever seen with mask wearing. The opposition has just become zero. Piers Corbyn has done nothing strategic. I mean, as much as he's been a voice and he's been arrested all these times, we've achieved nothing strategic. Why didn't we blockade the BBC? Wasn't even thought of. And it's starting to make me think about this controlled opposition issue again. There are others. I often see if somebody's got millions of views on YouTube and they've been left alone and they're supposedly saying all the right things, you have to also question, because I know how difficult it is to climb up the ranks on YouTube, and I've seen my views go from like 50 back to like 10. So they've definitely curbed and cut, and I've seen likes suddenly disappear. Now, if they can do that on a tiny channel, rest assured that YouTube is very tightly controlled, and I'm skeptical about anybody on YouTube per se that's got thousands of followers or hundreds of thousands or millions. It's very demoralizing. It's obviously the oligarchs know this, and also we are our own worst enemy, because I constantly see people on the Piers Corbyn group and myself at one point where we're posting cops swarming one guy and arresting him. And, you know, we're contributing to our own psyops. And you're supposed to have psyops, but you're supposed to use same side psyops for your own group, much as they did in World War II, where the media, even when a battle was horrifically being lost, would find some negative, some positive aspect of spin to put on it. That British attitude has clearly been murdered. If not, a lot of these newer, younger generation are on board with what's going on, because they're climate change fanaticists, or they've got a certain degree of that education for sure, 100% guaranteed. So the stopping of flights and things like that, they think that this is just saving the world. So that this is secret code for them. They're toughening up, and they're bearing with the not being able to go on holiday because they think it's for the greater good. I mean, I've seen some of this lunacy out there. You know, I met a guy who was a really solid guy in the army, special forces, did operations up in the north of the country or wherever it was, helicopters. He's got pictures of this whole operation, but he doesn't want to fly to Hawaii because he's thinking of his children for climate change. I mean, for heaven's sakes, what kind of a world will they live in where their future will never see Hawaii because of your ridiculous beliefs? So there is a big aspect of these people. Sorry, I'm just enjoying my Merlot at the same time while it's still free to do. Yeah, they're enjoying these lockdowns, some of them, or tolerating them. But at the same time, the people who are on board for this insanity are just sitting back with this controlled opposition. And it's the same thing as the QAnon. All these QAnon people have just gone silent, and then they do a little bit of a promotion to make people think again, oh, yes, we're back on board. But basically, all of these protests could have been managed so much better by even a single person who understands a little bit about marketing, and another single person, and they don't have to be the genius in their career either. You know, but these protests where he's shouting down a microphone, and you know, there's no change of pitch, and no, you know, it's just so, it's off-putting. They have not marketed themselves well. They strategically have been an absolute joke, where they've done nothing strategic. I mean, they should have blockaded the BBC from day one. Ongoing rolling mass action. You cannot also just go and do one display and think that it's all over, because this is, you're still back in lockdown the very next day. So this has to be understood, is that we've definitely got controlled opposition. There's no doubt in my mind about that. It's a difficult one, because how do you prove it? How do you not look like the bad guy in calling it out and splinter the groups even more? It's our single worst. You know, you can tolerate direct enemy, but infiltrated, groups is so much worse than a direct enemy, the police forces on the other side. But yeah, as old Basil Fawlty said to Manuel when he was depressed, we never won the war by getting depressed, So obviously we have to keep being motivated and manipulate ourselves. If you see the propaganda tool, how that kicked into gear in the UK, obviously they had the state establishment fully behind it, showing theatre performance level of, in the cinemas, they could go once a week in the cinemas and see what the latest updates in the war were, and of course they didn't demoralize their population, which is what we're doing to ourselves. And this is an ongoing cycle of leading to our cycle of silence, basically a spiral into silence. And just speaking out is only the first step in this process. And I myself have become quite worn down by just the single fact that I'm always on my own when it's not in a protest situation. I'm like literally the only one standing there objecting to the testing at work. There's just so little kind of backup, and this is a huge problem. So you get demoralized, and they haven't had regular protests to go and mix with the regular people to kind of re-energize yourself, see that you're not completely alone. Yeah, I mean, none of these things have come to fruition that they were saying, well, you can say that for sure that strategy, because human resources that they had could have been infinitely more effective. 10,000 people, 20,000, 30,000, it's a lot of people. Kind of dispersion of management either. You could have guys for security. That's one thing that we need. We're not accepting these laws. We're not disobeying the law by having ourselves protected from these corrupt police officers who are not police officers. They are not police officers. These are just corporate sponsored by trillionaire and billionaire pedophiles, essentially, which is becoming like conspiracy theory again. At one point it was gaining a little bit of traction. But again, this is your controlled opposition. They make sure that they fail at just the point of, they snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And yes, we may have to go this alone in a lot of instances, like I have. And it's not easy. It's just constant stress and constant conflict within yourself, as well as is fear as well. But you have to push on and fight on. Regardless, we didn't win the war by getting depressed. And this is a very true fact. What an easy way to win a war. Make sure that you don't have to incur any losses whatsoever. You just completely demoralize the enemy. And their enemy is us. Their virus is us, ordinary people. I'm inclined to agree with that in terms of the Antifa lot. They are a virus. But yeah, they mean us, basically, on the ground. And we have these just inadequate opposition. You have people saying a lot of the right things, but then they come up with a destructive idea that just overwhelms that very quickly. And one of them is just this hope that they will, like in the communists eat each other, so eventually it will collapse itself. This is unacceptable. You can't wait for that. The Soviet Union saw off 60 million people directly, never mind the indirect deaths, from gulags and starvation in the Ukraine. They physically forced them to not harvest their own crops and wouldn't let them move into other areas that were more free. It was basically a giant lockdown in the Ukraine. Some 20 million were starved to death there. They used the same ops in Russia for the, like the equivalent of QAnon. Exactly the same thing, pretending that there's this underground movement and it's very powerful. Top military guys and generals are getting together. It's been used before, and very interesting that this only came out from our own groups, by the way. This only came out after the Trump election. Boss, which is, again, they're just giving you enough information to make sure that you don't do anything effective. And there's so many things that they could do. I mean, the businesses are a powerful entity. They could have all collaborated with one another via email, via text, via Telegram, made sure they had at least 10,000, whatever it is, and open all together at the same time. And you continually do that. You cannot just do it once off. It's got to be ongoing, rolling mass action. Rolling, this never stops, never. Even when it's over, it's not over. You still got to drive forward, and then you're going after justice for what's been done. Believe me, the oligarchs are not going to let us out of this box of hell, where all you can do is go to work, watch your money that you're working for depreciate at an incredible rate, while the prices of things are skyrocketing, and you've got nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. So this fight goes on and on and on. I mean, there's so much bullshit on so many levels. Why is anybody not vehemently against us? Why am I coming across people? I can understand if you're a little bit afraid and you're just worried about not stirring up problems in the shops and this, that, and the other. But at this point, it's absurd. We're a country that said when there were terrorist attacks, we will not be cowed, and everybody went to work the next day boldly marching along. So wonderful. When now there's this mercurial, at the least, virus thingy that's killing millions. No, we must cower away. And it's reverse medical sort of science. It's reverse survival of the fittest. They're taking the lowest common denominator of the most at risk, and they're saying, we can't put them at risk. So the healthy people have to mask up and to save and that's even if they didn't want to be protected. Some of these older people, they say, stuff it, I don't want to do this. I would rather actually just see my grandkids and have it, it's been, all the options have been taken away from us, like an indemnity form where you can say, right, come what may, I don't care about this thing. I need to live my life. I'm signing on this indemnity form. They haven't given anybody that option. It's just, well, we lock everybody down based on the lowest common denominator, which means we'll never get out of this lockdown, ever. If this is the common denominator, I would say death should be 5% in the ages of, 0 to 40 before you can even start talking about. And then it should still be voluntary. You should still be allowed to say, well, be that as it may, I have to live my life. I have to go forward. And, there's a risk or now currently there isn't a risk. It's so negligible that you could say it isn't a risk. But anyway, if there was, say it was 5% of people from the ages of 0 to 40 were dying from this virus. It's not even 5% in the ages of 80 and above. But anyway, say it was this horrifying thing. It still should be your free choice. I've seen the Constitution and the six, what's it called? This 16th sort of point on the Constitution says you cannot violate people's rights to assemble and all this kind of thing. But then there's an A and a B section. So even within these stupid laws that we've made many, many years ago, which were obviously there for different reasons than to be used for the way that they're being used now, we can't even stand on our constitutions, to be honest. Because there's still a subclause saying, unless there is a serious threat, groups cannot be allowed to assemble. So that little if statement there, or unless statement, this just opened up the whole can of worms. You're back to square one. You're arguing with people for nothing, because people were all citing this clause 16 of the Constitution. It doesn't work. We just have to defiantly say, your law is not our law. End of story. The only law we accept are the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, in which case most of the high-powered billionaires and trillionaires and their puppets, may have to face jail. So they would never accept those laws. And it is literally that insane, because actual murders and actual robbery is just being ignored, and has been for a long time, or virtually given almost no policing. The crime of stealing bicycles in London was just an absolute case in point. It's extremely laughable. There's no police force available, and they tell you this when you say, like, come on, there's cameras everywhere. Can we not get onto this? My bike only went around that corner and that corner. They could have followed them via camera after the fact and seen exactly where it's gone. And it's the same thing. We don't have funding. We don't have police forces. It's absolute hogwash. I mean, I've seen this phenomenal amount of police force out against protests. And the organization level, just incredible. But nothing like that for where I'd prefer the resources to go. If I was boss of London, I would actually divert it right away. No more policing for any of these protests. It must all be diverted into bicycle theft. Just that. Because it would achieve a lot more than what's been achieved right now. And much was said about the Nazis and those people where your children could inform on your parents. And it all sounds very bad, but what we've got is actually virtually the inverse of that. The boomer generation have been the destroyers of the younger generation. They're the ones that mask up and don't give two fucks about whether these insane laws are being imposed or not. And, the fact that you've lost now many years of your life, if you multiply it by 3 billion people, a year of everybody's life of total freedom, unconditional freedom. There were still restrictions on that needed to be seriously looked at, like freedoms of speech and, again, speaking out against LGBT, whatever groups that you want to speak out against. But be that as it may, we're on a whole nother level here. And the boomer generation were the ones so the parents' generation were the ones that basically enabled the oppression and the destruction of the youth. They sacrificed their kids. And the Nazi generation was supposedly, as they say, the other way around, where the kids came and informed on their parents. But it's just showing the utter disdain that I have for this Marxist mindset that is just rotted into everything. And you're not allowed to say anything against it. You're not allowed to speak. Otherwise, oh, you're this so angry. You conspiracy theorist. There's all these counter objections to you. So that not only do you not get someone on your side, you've actually got people opposing you. And the older generation have the money still, not that we've got much. I mean, the oligarchs pretty much know that as a whole, the Christian whites are bankrupt. The Chinese have more financial resources in the fake financial man-made system that we have, where college kids learn that this is ironclad, cast in stone laws of economics and supply and demand, and these wonderful, it's cast in not stone, fucking titanium, it's immovable, it's facts and compound interest. But gender and race, well, that's just a construct, you know. Gender and race is a construct, the economy is cast in stone. It's pretty much, it's kind of been taught in universities, I would say like UCT, for a very long time. You know, conservatism and fact. And never mind just conservatism, because conservatives are a fake misnomer. Christian men are more free, or should be more free, should be more like the Crusaders, you know, in terms of outlook, where you're more proactive, you understand that humans are a little bit rough, and we've got to strive forward anyway because we are armies for Jesus Christ, or Yahweh, Father Yahweh, our God. And we are the Israelites. The believers are the Israelites. And the other believers are our cousins, per se. But nevertheless, that's how you drive forward. Instead of this namby-pamby capitulation, which quite honestly is been better than a standing army for the oligarchs, was the fake Christianity. Your World Council of Churches, your popes, your top bishops, and you can see it clearly where you go to these top churches in London, in nice areas, beautiful old female pastor who seems to have a wife or something strange. It's abomination. It's not religion anymore. It's abomination. I went to one down south near Surbiton 2 years ago. Wonderful, that atmosphere, beautiful stone building. Had one tradition which was incredible. You switch off all the lights in the church at Christmas, and then one by one you light candles, and it goes right the way around. This is all aesthetically beautiful, and they've captured everybody with this. Oh, it's wonderful. Families in there with kids, etc., but a female pastor. And starts talking about the donkey as if the donkey in the manger could speak, you know, that Mary was riding on. And the commentary of the donkeys, you know, it's such a strange system. Basically attacking the patriarchy, you know, that Joseph was the man and his wife, you know, was behaved like a wife. I was astonished. But people are forced to go there. Well, they've got no other outlet. They want to go there because they believe in Christmas. They believe in the tradition, and I believe in it. I think it's a great thing that we have. We didn't have Christmas this year, as far as I'm concerned. We didn't have Easter last year. Well, we didn't have Christmas last year. We didn't have Easter last year. And there's no fight back. The churches are the biggest treasonists of the whole lot because they should have been up in arms. Of course, I knew better by seeing the way they capitulated over many, many issues. And none of them are taking a strong enough standpoint. There's ominous things about, which I'm not even going to go into right now, which should have been identified immediately by all the church, which could have made a huge difference, even though they don't have a massive following in the UK where there's a bunch of bloody atheists running around, gay theists, that will go to the gay pride runs and whatever in Victoria Park, but they don't, adhere to anything Christian. Even the traditions, they're not particularly up in arms. They did observe them, but it's like, we kind of thought that was a lot of rubbish anyway. So a lot of them capitulated quite happily. But the ongoing thing has to be relentless, rolling mass action. And do your thing in whatever country you're in. And if you see that the group's slipping, take the initiative. But I think that tight-knit groups need to meet offline and start from there with people that they know or know through somebody, because this infiltration is staggering. I know for a fact that those marches were full of infiltrators. Like every second person you spoke to, especially if you were not there with a group of your own friends, was probing and seemed to be a little bit off. And then you would see them like walk away and put their masks on. And these people have put all their effort into whatever's going on. You think that they're not going to have a mere few £100,000 to make sure that there's organized opposition, controlled opposition. Believe me. And for some of them, they could pay $1 million, 500 million. They control all the money in the world, and they do not need your money. This is not about money. This is about the control and the restrictions of population and a genocidal hatred of a specific group, namely the ethnic Europeans in this population. They despise us for some reason. But at the same time, they want to use them in their pornography all the time. But nevertheless, to me, it's one giant tragedy, and it has been for a long time. When you start opening your eyes, which started to really opening my eyes in about 2016, and then I started probing and pushing, and I saw some things, and I still wasn't quite ready, and I was still slightly on the wrong path, but it had started. But believe me, once I knew, I changed immediately. You can change at the speed of thought. That's a powerful thing. The speed of thought, that's all we need. And everybody can take their masks off in one split second on the entire world, the entire planet, across the world. And what have you got to lose? If every single person did it, and you make sure you don't, if you really still think it's real, you make sure you don't cough on anybody. You can do that, but you take that mask off unless you enjoy this lockdown and you're a collaborator. There can be no other reason for you to be complying in any way. Is that you're either a proactive or a passive collaborator. And you are the enemy. Can switch this around very quickly And mobs could start attacking people that are saying this, because crowds are easily manipulated. They can seed a crowd with 10 people who have an agenda, have an objective, hand it down to them, and they can lead an entire group. Because believe me, a few collaborating creates a movement, and then that crowd will just follow. These people understand crowd control like a fucking science. And that's since the French Revolution. Egalitaire and all these wonderful, and while the most horrific things were happening right in full view of everybody. Beheadings of, it came down to where seamstresses were beheaded. And, the Robespierres and the leaders of the revolution, and we got to sit there and wait for them to be bumped off by their own? No. We know too much. We cannot accept that. No pastor can sit there and expect anybody to accept that. Sit back, hold tight, occupy till the Christ returns. Look, yes, but fight back, hold tight, not sit back, hold tight. Prep, prep for the inevitable. Well, you have to prep as a fighter, someone with arms. That's the key. It's a proactive thing. We don't know for sure exactly what's going on and where things are going. So you go out and you seek the objective you want. What do we want? We want to be absolutely free, unconditionally. Firstly, freedom to travel where we expect to rightfully be able to travel. I don't expect to rightfully be admitted to certain countries because I don't have those rights, but I do have rights to many countries. As whoever you are. You have certain rights and you have certain things that are not your right. That's where coveting comes into play. But we need to have an objective. And the one that we need first and foremost is to take these masks off. And then freedom to gather in massive groups if we want. Of course, they're going to come with the riot police and the water cannons, and they have thousands of these people. They're prepared. We need to be relentless and break the system, basically. Fast movement, quick assembling of thousands of people in dispersion, then reassemble. It's an ongoing thing. And you have to keep doing that like bending a piece of wire, and you break the system. Rolling mass action. The sheer selfishness of the fucking people, it's incredible. It only becomes a problem when they ban drinking and they ban the pubs or they ban smoking. Well, it doesn't bother a lot of these people that you can't surf and you can't go to the beach. And no, we have to be down for all of this. All of the normal freedoms of movements and association and what you wear on your face. You have to. Put in the same effort that you do for your job. This is your job. I mean, you drag yourself out of bed. You have to go to work. Some days you absolutely feeling really down and lousy, but you still do it. And that's the same that we need for this ongoing mass action. And apply your minds, apply what you've learned, even in the corporate world, what they've learned about marketing, flash mobs, ambush marketing. There's so many things you can apply. And it would be far more interesting than just complying to lockdown anyway. And become robust. You may be locked away. to hell with the consequences. At some point, people are absolutely dedicated. They're prepared to die. But there's also an even more advanced state, is, are you prepared to kill? And it's coming close to that, where what's been removed from you is worth starting to become worth that. At the very least, when you consider the thousands of generations that it took to make you as a person, dodging wars and fighting and not accepting this kind of tyranny, and you're just going to all throw it away, become inoculated for children. That's the only thing this thing will inoculate females against if they survive this vaccine. And they'll confuse people. They'll put in this vaccine. Some of them get just a placebo, so they can sit in the groups and say, well, I've got it. I feel great. Maybe it's a vitamin B shot. People are diabolically evil. And even if you don't believe that, just pretend you believe that and look through this as a lens. Be as if you were an employed lawyer who has to fight a cause that you don't necessarily believe in. But now you have to do the research. As a lawyer, as a professional, you have to find the things that are going to promote your cause. So looking through that lens of things completely. That the billionaires and trillionaires have this atavistic hatred of the ethnic European white male. They also feel that there's too many people on the earth and they're going to get rid of them. Start to reinvestigate things as if you were defending even a cause that you didn't believe in. And then present it in court like we used to do at school. Do a debate for two sides. You didn't even care about the issue, but they were testing your debating skills. Test your deductive skills. And eventually you'll see that you'll have to test a lot more than just your deductive skills. Anyway, I've said enough. All the 5 people that ever watched this thing, and the FBI and the CIA, those latter can put their finger up their bum. But anyway, I'll catch you guys later.